So if you want to completely change your life, like the absolute worst possible thing you can do is set some massive life-altering goal.
Oh, totally. Which is wild, right? Because we all do it.
Right. We have this culturally ingrained fantasy of the sudden epiphany, like this dramatic turning point where you wake up at dawn, you empty your entire fridge into the trash, delete all your social media, and just magically step into a brand new existence.
I mean, it's an incredibly seductive idea, but the problem is human neurobiology absolutely hates it.
Yeah.
When you demand an overnight overhaul of your entire identity, your brain perceives that massive change as a literal threat. It triggers a huge spike in friction, drains your willpower by noon, and basically just sends you running right back to your comfort zone.
Which brings us to today's deep dive.
Mm.
Because we're dismantling that whole fantasy and replacing it with something that actually works.
And the sources we're using today are, well, they're honestly kind of surprising.
Very surprising. We've got this fascinating stack of transcripts that were originally designed to teach English conversation. So just ordinary people talking about their lives, their stress, daily habits.
But when you actually read between the lines, these everyday interactions contain a literal masterclass in behavioral psychology and self-improvement.
Exactly. And our mission today is to decode the mechanics of changing your life. But instead of looking at, dry psychological data, we are going to focus entirely on the interesting stories embedded in these conversations.
Because stories are how we actually process things.
Right. These highly relatable, everyday anecdotes are perfect because they map out how real, massive life changes are actually built on these tiny, almost invisible daily actions.
Which is great news for anyone listening.
Absolutely. So whether you are trying to learn a language, get fit, or honestly just feel less overwhelmed by your schedule, the stories we are unpacking today hold the exact blueprint for success.
And it all starts with the people around you.
Yes. Segment 1, the invisible price tag. Because you cannot change your own story if you don't look at how you're training your supporting cast, so to speak.
And there's this brilliant, just understated anecdote in these dialogues that highlights this perfectly.
No, the late night texting one, I loved this.
Yes. So someone had a friend who just had a habit of texting really late at night, and the person, wanting to be a good friend, wanting to be nice, would routinely fire back a reply, even if they were literally half asleep.
Right, they thought they were just being supportive in the moment.
Exactly. But then one evening, they were just too exhausted and didn't reply for an hour. And the next morning, the friend was genuinely angry, like demanding to know where they had been.
With a tone that implied like a formal contract had been breached or something.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is that we unconsciously train people to expect instant access to us. We train them on how to treat us.
Because you didn't just reply to a text. You inadvertently established a standard of behavior. You taught this person that your energy is a 24/7 buffet.
Which is a trap we fall into when we confuse kindness with a total lack of boundaries. But healthy boundaries aren't walls, they are doors.
I like that. Doors, not walls.
Right. Because you can be the most warm, welcoming, hospitable person in the world, but you still possess the absolute right to control who enters, how long they stay, and, when you close the door so you can just get some sleep.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I love the concept of having an inner price tag. You're dictating your own market value by how freely you give away your attention.
Exactly.
But I do have to push back a little here.
Go for it.
Because I understand the theory of the door, right. But when I actually ignore that late night text, my stomach drops. Like, I feel this intense guilt. How do we stop feeling like we're just being inherently selfish when we do this?
It's so hard, but that guilt is just a biological reflex. Evolutionary psychology actually looks at this a lot in terms of tribal belonging.
Oh, like fearing getting kicked out of the group.
Precisely. We're wired to fear social rejection because historically, rejection meant isolation and, well, danger. Which ties into another really interesting story from the sources.
The coworker email one.
Yes, the coworker who started every single message with the word sorry.
Oh, man. Even when they're the ones doing a favor.
Right. It was like, sorry to bother you, but here's that crucial report you asked me for.
It's the sorry habit. Like shrinking yourself down to ask for permission to exist in the space.
And when you have that sorry habit, your self-worth is entirely outsourced to the people around you. You're constantly seeking external validation that you're still accepted.
So when you try to set a boundary, the evolutionary panic kicks in.
You feel guilty because your brain literally thinks you are risking your place in the tribe.
Which leads to one of my favorite concepts from these dialogues, what they call the please still like me essay.
Oh, the over-explaining.
Yeah, because we feel that guilt. We can't just say a simple no. We have to write this 5-paragraph dissertation explaining exactly why we can't make it to dinner, giving our entire schedule, offering alternative dates, just apologizing profusely.
It's a total defense mechanism. You're just trying to manage the other person's emotional reactions so they'll reassure you that you're still a good person.
Right.
But true boundary setting, which is how you build self-worth that isn't reliant on external validation, requires dropping that essay entirely.
Just keeping it simple.
Yeah. A polite, concise, I can't make it tonight, but thanks for thinking of me, is incredibly powerful. It shifts it from a negotiation for approval into just a simple statement of fact.
Which really reclaims your inner price tag. But, knowing how to close the door on other people is honestly only half the battle.
Oh, for sure.
Because even if you silence your phone and you set these perfect external boundaries, you are still left alone in the dark with your own brain.
And that is often the harder task, setting internal boundaries.
Yeah, stopping your mind from being what the sources call a battery thief.
Because you can protect your time from others, but if you can't protect your cognitive energy from your own intrusive thoughts, you're still going to wake up exhausted.
And there's this incredibly relatable story in the text about the classic 2 a.m. worry spiral.
We have all been there.
Right. The person is lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing, and they're agonizing over everything from, like, the global economic crisis to some awkward joke they made at a party 3 years ago.
Which is such a universal experience.
The phrase they used was so good. They said they felt like they were trying to control the whole world from my pillow.
Which is a profound waste of metabolic energy, honestly.
That's not why.
Well, the human brain consumes about 20% of our daily calories. And when you're trapped in that worry spiral, you are burning premium fuel trying to solve abstract, unsolvable concepts.
And your body doesn't know the difference. Yeah.
Exactly. Your brain's threat detection system is ancient. It reacts to an embarrassing memory the exact same way it reacts to a physical predator in the room.
But the breakthrough in the story came from a brilliantly simple exercise.
The 2 circles?
Yeah. The person literally got out of bed, took a piece of paper, and drew 2 circles. 1 circle for things I can control and 1 for things I can't control.
It's such a grounding visual.
Right. So the can't control circle was the past, the news, other people's opinions. And the can control circle was stuff like going to sleep, putting the phone in another room, or doing a breathing exercise.
And when you map it out like that, it highlights a stark reality. 90% of our anxiety lives entirely in that can't control circle.
It's all out there in the abstract.
Exactly. And the sources bring in this concept of the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, I love this part. The biological bouncer.
Yes, that is the perfect analogy. Your brain is getting bombarded with millions of bits of data every second. It can't process it all. So the RAS acts as the bouncer, deciding what gets past the velvet rope into your conscious awareness.
And it takes its orders from whatever you focus on.
Exactly. If your inner critic is loud, if you're ruminating on how terrible the world is, you are handing the bouncer a VIP list made entirely of threats. Your brain will actively filter out the positive stuff and just look for proof that you are failing.
Which completely changes how I view my phone habits, like the whole concept of an information diet.
Oh, doom scrolling.
Yes. When we lie in bed doom scrolling, we think we're just passively consuming. But we are literally feeding that can't control circle. It's junk food for the brain.
You're intentionally programming your RAS to be highly sensitized to anxiety.
But by focusing on the can control circle, you reprogram that filter. You can't always magically change your mood or fix the economy, but you can change your next 5 minutes.
That is the key shift.
You can put the phone down, you can drink some water, you can just focus on the immediate present.
And that transition, taking command of those 5 minutes, is the crucial bridge because, honestly, once you've stopped the negative internal spiraling, how do you actually start making progress?
Right, because I can draw those circles all day long. But when my alarm goes off at 6 a.m. for a workout, I am still hitting snooze.
The disconnect between knowing and doing.
Exactly. So what is the actual plot twist here? How do we start?
Well, the answer isn't a massive dramatic plot twist at all. It's incredibly boring, tiny micro actions.
Yes. The story of the Netflix binge versus the gym.
A classic trap.
Someone decides they want to get fit, so they set this goal. I'm going to work out for an hour every day and lose 30 pounds in 3 months. And then they just sit on the couch, look at that monumental task, feel entirely overwhelmed, and say, I'm just not motivated today. I'll start tomorrow.
Which ties directly into James Clear's work in Atomic Habits, which is mentioned in the sources, the difference between goals and systems.
Goals cause burnout, right?
Yes, because they required you to rely entirely on willpower, which we know is a finite resource. The turning point in the source material was when that person abandoned the massive goal and committed to just 5 minutes of running.
Just 5 minutes.
Right. A system that is so small, it bypasses the brain's threat response entirely. And here is the secret. Motivation usually comes after you start, not before.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Waiting for motivation is exactly like standing at the edge of a swimming pool and saying, when I feel comfortable, I'll jump in.
Oh, I love that.
Right. But the comfort only comes after the jump. The shock of the cold water is what actually wakes you up. A messy start today is infinitely better than a perfect routine you plan to start one day.
You have to be willing to endure that messy, unmotivated 5 minutes. Because the action itself generates the dopamine that makes it easier to do it again the next day.
But, and this is a big but, even a perfect 5-minute system will fail if it's placed in a hostile environment.
Which brings us to setting the scene, designing your environment.
Because if you want to change your story, you have to design the set.
Exactly. As we were saying, willpower is described in these sources as a muscle that drains by the end of the day. If you have to use willpower just to get started, you're going to lose.
You have to automate the decisions. The sources had such great specific examples of this.
Like the gym bag.
Yes, keeping the gym bag right by the door,
Yeah.
putting your workout clothes literally next to the bed so you trip over them when you wake up,
Yeah.
moving the junk food away from your desk.
You eliminate the friction for the good habits and increase it for the bad ones.
And there's also that concept of making it attractive by pairing it with a reward.
Temptation bundling.
Yeah, like saying you can only listen to your absolute favorite podcast or watch a specific TV show while you are stretching or doing that 5-minute task. It feels like self-bribery, but it totally works.
It works because it tricks your dopamine system into looking forward to the difficult task. But we also have to remember that your environment isn't just physical. It's social, too.
Oh.
There's this synthesis of ideas here that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
The social information diet.
Exactly. If your social environment is constantly full of negative inputs or people who mock self-improvement, you are going to stay stuck. Your brain just absorbs that as the baseline reality.
But finding an accountability buddy fixes that.
It totally removes the need for willpower entirely because the social friction of letting down your friend is way higher than the physical friction of just doing the task.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now? It means I want to challenge you. Pick just one tiny 5-minute habit today and physically change one thing in your room or on your phone to make it easier to accomplish tomorrow.
Just one thing.
Make the right choice the easiest option. So, to summarize our journey today, changing your life isn't about massive, dramatic leaps.
Not at all.
It's about taking control of the stories you live out. Setting those boundaries, remember, doors, not walls. Drawing the circle of what you can actually control. And relying on tiny 5-minute systems rather than waiting for some magical motivation to strike.
Which actually raises a really provocative thought to end on.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Well, the sources suggest that our identity is built slowly through these habits, right? If you read for 5 minutes a day, you become a reader. Your brain adopts that identity.
Action precedes identity.
Exactly. Which raises this fascinating question for the listener to mull over after this ends. Is there really a permanent, unchangeable, true self deep inside us? Or are we entirely just the sum of the tiny, almost accidental habits we repeat every day?
Wow.
And if that's true, could you become a completely different person by this time next year just by changing what you do for 5 minutes tomorrow morning?
That is wild to think about. You really are just the author of your own story. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep testing out those 5-minute systems, and we'll see you next time.